In today's video, I talked to Neil Barbour. Neil is an ITV journalist and creator of the podcast Daisy and Me. Neil is the father of Daisy, who is autistic and non-verbal. We speak about the challenges around autism, the education sector, and Daisy's journey so far. Hey guys, and welcome to another video on MaxiAspie and another video of the Autism Connections series. And today's guest, as you can see by the intro, today's guest is Neil Barbour. Thanks Neil for joining me.
Max, how are you?
Hi Neil, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Good to see you.
Obviously, thank you for coming on. And, the first question I always ask people on this series is, what is your connection to autism?
My connection to autism is my daughter Daisy, who is now 7. She was diagnosed as autistic when she was 2. Her story, we've spoken before, Max. Her story was very similar to yours in that she's non-verbal. She had all of her speech. She was speaking in 8 or 9 word sentences. She'd memorized books. She was sort of saying a lot of the things that we were saying and responding to questions and things like that. And then it all just went. So it all just kind of went over a period of about 2 or 3 months. And then she started showing the inverted commas typical traits associated with autism. So she would spin and stim and do all that sort of stuff. So we pursued a diagnosis, and they diagnosed regressive autism spectrum disorder, which obviously is a sort of subcategory of autism spectrum disorder. And from there, we've kind of been on a bit of a journey, and we've learned an awful lot in the last 5 years about autism. The way we, as a family, talk about autism has completely changed in the last 5 years because we've been educating ourselves, speaking to people like you, speaking to other people on our podcast, and just getting insights from people who are autistic. That's what's so important to us, is to try and empower Daisy to do the best in her life, do whatever she wants to do in her life. But the only way we can do that, because she's non-verbal, is to speak to other autistic people and find out kind of what makes them tick, what they like, what they don't like, and just try and sort of apply it to Daisy. But yeah, our connection is our daughter.
So you run that podcast that I had the honour of appearing on as well with your dad as well, Daisy and Me. Brilliant podcast. I advise everyone who's watching this to go check it out. But some of the guests you've had have been extraordinary on the show, and you've been raising a lot of awareness for that. So how has that been to sort of organise and get fellow autistic people on, and what's sort of the general message that you've got a lot from your guests that have come on?
Well, it's really rewarding to do, because I think I said sort of about a year after Daisy was diagnosed, I didn't really sort of have a handle on disability or diversity or anything like that. And now that I have a personal connection to both disability and neurodiversity, it's really rewarding to speak to people who are neurodiverse, who have done something with their life, or they're raising awareness, or they're speaking out on a subject. It's really rewarding to just get those voices heard. And yeah, we have been really lucky to get some of the guests we've had, the celebrities, Anne Hegarty, yourself. We've had parents of autistic people. We've had, one of the most amazing interviews we've had is a woman called Elizabeth Bonker, who is a non-speaking woman from America, who we did an interview with her, and she communicates by typing. on an iPad, and that then a voice comes out. And the process of just speaking to someone who, to all intents and purposes, seems very much like Daisy, who, you know, is taking in all of the language that is around her, but just can't verbalize, was really, really something. And I think more than anything, the podcast has just been an education for us, because the sad reality with autism is not enough autistic voices are actually heard. You're doing great work, and there are other people in the neurodiverse community speaking out. But in terms of sort of the wider, broader message of just, you know, hearing what autistic people are saying about how their lives are going, what they want from their lives, what they want from, you know, the sort of world around them, is really, really important, because I don't think we hear those messages enough. But then, I mean, one of the main messages that actually stuck with me is from the very start with your interview. You said something that we still quote to this day, where you talked about your mum and the fact that your mum said to you, she grew up with you rather than you growing up with her. And we apply that every single day, because, you know, as a parent, you get stuff wrong. You always do. And whether your child's autistic or not, you just get stuff wrong. And just that little moment where you just go, hold on, we're growing up with Daisy. She's not growing up with us. We've got to take her lead and follow it. So we've learned loads, but those key messages are just really important to hear.
I've got a few goosebumps now, yeah, because yeah, my mum was very big supportive network in my life, and you know, I think when you grow up as well, you sort of do see the sacrifices that your mum and dad made and what they sort of had to um, adapt to. You know, I always remember not being able to talk, getting very frustrated at the fact I couldn't talk, felt it was sort of a block there. Now that I can talk, mum probably thinks, oh God, you know, will he shut up again? But you know, I remember mum and dad having to sort of sacrifice a lot of things. You know, couldn't go out with me. You know, couldn't go around pet like friends' houses, or you know, had to have something on at a specific time at night. Otherwise, it'd be World War III. So it's an incredible sort of sacrifice, and it's hard enough being a parent already. You know, right, without something else to have to think about.
You know,
Um,
the other thing that I sort of feel like we're learning, and it's still a sort of daily thing you have to remind yourself of, is that, you know, Daisy's existence is a blessing, regardless of the challenges that she's got associated with her autism. To have her in our lives is just such a beautiful thing, because every day she makes us laugh. Every day without fail, she makes us laugh several times a day. And it's always something that, you know, is completely unique to her. She'll do something that is just, you wouldn't see any other child do. And that is a blessing. And I think actually what one of the other things we learned from the podcast is actually embracing that difference is really important, because there is a natural period of it's a difficult one to talk about, but a natural period of where a parent sort of goes, okay, this isn't what I expected, and there's, you know, an adapting, and there's a sort of, okay, right, and some parents understandably have trouble getting their heads around it, but every single day, Daisy's existence as she is enriches us beyond belief. It's so important that any parent, you know, who can get themselves to that place where they go, what my daughter and what my son is so powerful and so important, and it makes me a better person because of how they are.
Absolutely, and it's you know, a lot of parents. You get some parents that really cry for a label, you know, and a diagnosis, and then you get some people that just, you know, avoid it. You know, just don't want it. Not my kid, you know, not my child. But I think it's so important to know who you are, you know, and have that diagnosis. Otherwise, you sort of go through life thinking, "What's wrong with me?" or you know, "Why am I how I am?" At least you've got the answers there to provide you with that answer. And I always say it's never an excuse for behaviour, but it is a reason. Yeah, my mum always goes, "Oh, you was a right painstaking to the shops because you'd cry and you'd go on the floor and we would have to drag you out the shop." And I used to go, "Yeah, but mum," I said, "you're looking at it from now my perspective. I couldn't talk, I couldn't communicate to you that the environment was too stressful, it was too much. So what you saw and what other people probably saw is just someone control your child because they're having a tantrum is actually me trying to communicate to you, probably not in the best behaviour because a lot of people will go bad behaviour, but it's me trying to communicate nonetheless to say I need to get out of here. It's too much." And that was in the form of me laying on the ground or crying or whatever it was. And some people see that as, "Oh, you was a right pain growing up," and it's like, no, that was me trying to communicate to you in the only way that I could that I wasn't comfortable. I suppose it leads me on to my next question is with the communication with Daisy, is she starting to talk a bit more, or is it still sort of that speech barrier still there? And what other sort of ways are you having to communicate with Daisy?
Well, yeah, Daisy's still non-speaking, so she, well, intuition as parents, you can understand what a noise means or what she wants. But we have two methods. We've got a brilliant person in our lives called Sky, who drew up a AAC communication book, which is obviously a lot of widget symbols, which allows her to construct sentences to express wants, feelings, wishes. She will regularly go in there and say, "I want to go to the beach," or "I want an ice lolly," or something like that. But more powerfully, even little things like telling us when she feels a bit ill, she's been able to go, I've got a sore tummy or whatever. So she currently uses that as a daily communication tool, alongside sort of a tiny little bit of signing, Makaton. But the most exciting thing we're really excited about now is we've managed to source a VOCA, so a voice operated communication aid, so an iPad with a speaker attached that will put out a little girl's voice and allow Daisy to just verbalize her wishes. So when she's going on her AAC book, we say what she's saying. When she goes on this iPad, she'll be able to construct a sentence and the voice will say what she wants. So that's the direction at the moment. Whether she ever speaks again, I don't know. It's it's a completely, like, no one can guess because it's unknown. She may never speak again. We've sort of come to terms with the fact that might be the case, and all we want to do is try and empower her to. You talked about being in the shops and not being able to communicate. We're hoping that because she's got a box with a voice now, then she, if she has something to say, she can say it. If she doesn't want to be in a shop because it's too loud or too bright or it's too busy, she'll be able to tell us. So that's the direction at the moment. But I mean, you always want to hear their voice, and I think what we've sort of taught ourselves is that a voice doesn't have to be spoken. Your voice can be heard in so many different ways, and actually that's what it's about for Daisy, is just empowering her to actually get her voice out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I remember last time we spoke, it was sort of that element. Will she speak? Won't she speak? And it is so difficult. I think my mum and dad growing up they were very resigned to the fact, I think, that maybe I won't speak again. And even growing up, when I started talking, it was like the next thing of, is he going to learn enough? Is he going to have the social skills throughout life to function, in society and how it operates? Um, and I think it's always important, that we don't underestimate special educational needs, neurodiverse people, because there were so many people I think that sort of wrote me off to my mum and my dad. He's bit of a lost cause. He's not going to amount to anything. And now it's like, I know confidently that they know one day I'm going to move out. They know I'll be okay. They know this now. And at the time, when all that stuff's going on, when they can't talk and when they find it hard to socialise, it's very easy to sort of think, oh, what is their future going to be like? And that's a genuine concern from a parent. But I always say to parents that they might surprise you.
Do you remember what it was like when you began to talk?
I do. I remember I still found it incredibly frustrating because I would still say words wrong. And when I said words wrong, it made me speak less because it was a confidence thing. I always remember saying, I couldn't say swimming. I always said swimming. And, my friends would laugh and it made me think, I'm not going to say that anymore. My mum forever blames me because I always get her to say now soldiers and shoulders are mixed up all the time because I used to mix them up. So I used to go, oh, can I have, toast shoulders? And she'd be like, soldiers. And I'd be like, couldn't comprehend the two. And it was difficult. It was really difficult. But I remember even when I had a voice, I mean, clearly can't shut up now. But when I was starting to talk, it was a relief. It was like, oh, I can communicate and I can get my feelings out. But it was still a struggle because you unlock a sort of toolkit, but you don't know how to use any of it. I didn't really know how to use the language. I was surrounded by people that could and just use words and suppose took them for granted, because it's just like, hey, suppose how we all can walk and how we can all breathe. We all take it for granted, until something happens. So, but I was just so behind. So when it came to reading books and stuff, I would have a full-on meltdown if I had a book that I had to read in year 6 because they'd go, okay, you read a line, and then when it came to me, I was like, I can't read this book because I haven't focused on reading because let's face it, I never thought I could be able to talk. And now and now I can talk and it's like I don't know how to use any of the language or spell the words or know what they mean. I still say words wrong now. I mean, I might come across quite adequate, but there's still words I say now that's like, I don't absolutely mean that. I meant this, and that still causes a lot of confusion. But I just remember at the time, as you say, it's really funny how you said about like the parent sort of impulse because I could literally hum a noise to my mum, and she would know what I wanted. And I'd say the same to my nan, and she'd be like, "What does he want?" So I could literally go to my mum, which was a lot of the communication was just and they knew.
And that's a difficult tightrope to walk as a parent because we're told that sort of responding to every, we've got this communication book, which Daisy, the more she uses, the more skilled she'll get at communicating. But there are those moments where she wants something quickly and a noise will do it. So that it's a sort of balancing act of trying to make her use her book to enable her to learn more and communicate better, but also not frustrating her, because if she wants something in that moment, sometimes you just got to understand what she's saying and give it to her straight away. But it is there's always a sort of balance to be found.
It's really difficult, and it's like that accessibility versus learning, and it's sort of getting it right, and it's so tough. I suppose that does lead me on to my next question, which was around schools and things like that. Have you found people have been quite supportive of Daisy? Environments, government help, and everything else like that.
Yeah, we've been quite lucky. So we found a place for Daisy in what's called an infant assessment unit, which is attached to a mainstream school, but it's specialist provision. She's about to leave that in September. And again, we've been very lucky to get a place at a special educational needs school, which will provide higher provision for Daisy than she would get in a mainstream. So we have been very lucky with all of that, and and also in terms of accessing all of the help that we can get, through speech and language therapy and other things like that, we've got mostly what we need. It's interesting because it's always, I through my work I speak to a lot of parents who have to really fight against the system to get what they need, and in some cases are in the most incredible debt because they can't get their child into school, or they need extra speech and language provision for their child. And that's really sort of hard to hear, because we feel relatively lucky in that, we've got kind of what we need so far for Daisy. So it hasn't been too much of a fight. There are moments where you do have to go into battle mode, and just make sure that Daisy's really getting what she needs. But that's just a constant process you have to go through as a parent, is just making sure that, are they meeting everything that's in her EHCP? When is this appointment supposed to be? When are we supposed to get this? And just it's sort of constantly keeping that flow of admin going. But that's part of Daisy, and she needs it to succeed. So we'll keep battling on for her.
Absolutely. And for you, going forward, I mean, it's a bit of a hard question to answer, really. But what would sort of be your ideal, life for Daisy? When she's grown up, and what do you sort of envision the sort of best life for her?
It's funny you ask, actually, because I remember when we had her first educational psychologist meeting, they asked us that exact question. They part of the assessment, we was about provision for school and whatever. But then right at the end, they said, and what do you want for Daisy later in life? And at that point, we didn't know. We genuinely looked like we were just looking towards the next month rather than the next 10 years and the next 20 years. So actually the first answer we had, which was given by instinct, it's still the answer I give now, is I just want her to be happy. Which, whatever she decides she wants to do, whether that is, take a job, or she wants, whether she's still here with us, whether she decides to move out, whatever she wants to do, if she can lead some sort of happy, independent life, then I'm over the moon. I think it's difficult when you sort of, get into that whole, you never know what you're going to be like as a parent anyway before you're in it. But sometimes you hear stories about parents, who say, I want you to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor. And I always kind of looked at that and thought, well, that's not really your choice. It's up to the child. And especially with Daisy, all we need to do is ensure the building blocks for her to do whatever she wants to do are there, and then she can make that choice. And we'll be here, if she decides she wants to stay here, absolutely fine. If she decides she wants to do something else, that's absolutely fine. And we'll just be here to just enable that, really.
I think that's a really, really good answer. And I think it's going to help massively, when she's older and she's seeing you do all the work that you're doing. That's one thing I wish I could actually physically see. Because I know my mum did a lot of work, and I knew that my mum had a lot of fighting, but I've never got to see it. If that makes sense, isn't I've never saw a video of my mum doing an interview or talking about it. So the only interview she's ever done is with me.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be so important for her, seeing her dad, when she's growing up, like doing the podcast that you've been doing the interviews, and just spreading that awareness, and sharing your story and her story and helping others, is going to be so important for her to see.
And actually, I think the other important thing to remember is, you mentioned about not being able to see the fight and not being able to, all parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities have to, at some point, have to fight for something, and in the worst scenarios, they have to fight for a lot all of the time. Is occasionally all of those parents just just need to take a second to just pat themselves on the back, because actually it can be relentless, but your parental drive will get you there. It's hard, it's tiring, there's, you know, paperwork, you know, stacked up to your ceiling, but if you can take a moment to recognize the wins, as well as, you know, being involved in the fight, because that can take you over. Being involved in the fight can consume you. It's just to accept that, you know, that is a win. You know, it might seem small. You know, it might seem like little things. Like the other day, we got this communication device for Daisy, and we got it while she was at school, and we were testing it because we've got to learn it as well as she has. And I programmed in the words, "Hello, Daisy, how was your day?" to be able to speak that to her when she got home. And Daisy's had a little go with this device in school before, but not you know, masses of time. I programmed that in, and Daisy decided that she didn't really want to play with this device because she just wanted to go and eat some rice cakes and sit in a chair swing. She just went straight to the words, "I finish." And I burst out laughing, because that was her saying, "Don't bother me with this now, Dad. I'm finished with that. I know how to use it. You know, just leave me alone." And you know, it's little wins like that where you just go, okay, we're on the right track, because she knows that's what it's for, but she's decided, not now. I'll do it when I'm ready. Which, yeah, and you just got to recognize those moments, that they are little wins in the fight that will just carry on.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's not a no. It's just not now. And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
sometimes it is. Yeah, sometimes it can be incredible. You know, I always take my hat off to parents, because parents always blame themselves. You know, they always think that, you know, am I doing enough? Am I not? You know, am I doing this right? Am I not doing that right? And yeah, at the end of the day, all I say to parents is, you're making the best choice that you can for your child, because you love them and you want what's best for them. And as long as you're doing that, you should never blame yourself. And if anything, parents become experts overnight. You know, it's like it's amazing, you know, to think that you can have a child, you know, and then you've got to become a parent, you know, and learn the sort of necessities anyway. And then you might have this condition that comes up, and suddenly you're reading 40 to 50 books on autism. And hey, you know, you're probably more qualified than some of the doctors to diagnose by that point, because you've read up on about it. But it is really tricky struggle. But I loved your answer about her being happy, you know, because through academic school where I struggled, um, you know, my interview that I did with my mum, she said to me, it got less about the qualifications and more about just getting you through school and you being happy. You know, so where some parents, as you say, you know, you're going to be a doctor and we want you to have A's in GCSEs and B's, and you know, if you get anything under, that's not good enough. And it's that sort of pressure, you know, that is applied to our young people. Um, my mum knew it was never going to be an A in GCSE or a B in GCSE, but her main priority was for me to be happy. And it sounds like that for Daisy as well. Of course, you'd love her to get A's and B's in GCSEs, but if she doesn't at the same time, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
Um,
you can't measure success in grades, and you can't measure success in, you know, what job you've got and the amount of money you earn, or you can't measure success. You have to measure success in happiness, and that's the only way you can do it, because everything else is just a road to feeling unhappy and unsatisfied with what you've got. As long as she feels happy and we feel happy, you know, I think that's a big win.
Absolutely. And I suppose my last question to you as well, a bit of a multi-part question, but hey, I'll ask it nonetheless. Yeah, what's the sort of biggest message that you want people to take out of this interview? And you know, if Daisy is watching this in 10 years' time, you know, what would your message be to her in 10 years?
I would two answers to that probably. There's a practical answer and there's a sort of a dream scenario. The practical answer is I can only speak about my experience as a parent. So my advice to any other parent, and I'm still in it, I'm still doing it and taking advice from other parents further down the line, is educate yourself as much as you can about your child's existence and what their condition might be or what their experience might be, whether it's dyslexia, whether it's ADHD or autism, any number of the special educational needs. Educate yourself about what their existence is like, and just prepare yourself to need to know that information, because what you find out is often, the early meetings that you go to where you don't know as much, you kind of get a little bit blindsided and you go, oh, what's that? And then further down the line, because you've picked up all this education through speaking to mainly autistic people and just finding out what their experience is like, because you've got that education through the sort of time that you've been a parent, you go into those meetings where you need things, where you need to get this for Daisy and you need to get that for Daisy, so much more prepared and so much more aware of all the language that goes around, education and healthcare and all the forms. So just it can seem daunting, and God knows I was overwhelmed right at the start, but you have to throw yourself into it. You have to really just take on every bit of knowledge that you can about how the system works, what it's going to do for you, and how you can get what you need for your child. So main message to parents is educate yourself. In terms of Daisy watching this in 10 years, the hope that I have, and it feels like we're on that path to this place, is that we've got a world where neurodivergence is not something that is singles people out for being in this part of education or for not working or for needing social care. My hope is that the world changes around neurodivergent people, rather than what's happened previously is that neurodivergent people change to fit in the world that they are existing in, and that shouldn't be the case. So my hope is that in 10 years time that Daisy's existing in a world that understands her differences, accepts them, and enables her to try and be the best that she can be, whether she's talking, whether she's working, whether she's here with us. If the world's a better place, I'll be a happy man.
That's perfect. And I think what a nice message as well. And I just want to say again, Neil, thank you for coming on today and talking about it.
Well, thank you, Max. It's been a pleasure as always.